check this out.
Hey guys, Simon here. Today I'm cracking on this oak and ashwood coffee table, and the premise of this build will be fixing the mistakes I've made in my previous build. And I will get a little bit into learning processes and talk some about how I like to learn, which applies to woodworking as well. And also what I found during my very extensive and deep research that consisted of one question to ChatGPT about how others like to learn. So let's get started. Alright, so let's start with the list of mistakes I have to address in this build, and I found two big ones. First one was I did not account for the snipe when running a wood through the planer. I have a small and rather cheap jointer planer, and I had to figure out a way how to plane longer pieces of wood, which I did, and I managed to cut the snipes to a minimum, and now I'm accounting for that every time. But that mistake caused my first table to be smaller than I planned, and fortunately for now I don't sell the stuff I make, but if I was and I accidentally were to make a smaller table, then I don't think that it would be a very great day. Mistake number two was my mounting system for the legs that was pretty much as bad as it gets, but in this build I thought that I would be proactive and I bought some metal legs. And my excuse for that was that it would fit the design well, which it did, but really what it was a skill issue. But saying that, I have a next table design in which I want to make a wooden base, so I guess I will have an opportunity for some more screw-ups. Those are the mistakes I want to address from the previous build, but I also made one mistake in this build that I will show you at the end, which isn't as big as shaking legs that make your cup of coffee dance around on the table, flooding everything around, but it's a pretty big screw up on my part as well, with an issue that really just should be addressed. Okay, so let's talk about what I'm actually doing in this build. So what I've done so far is I started by cutting the boards into smaller strips, and as you saw there in the beginning, I had an issue with my circular saw. Basically my blade wasn't wide enough to cut through the whole thickness of the wood, so I cut off the rest with the sawzall, and what I was left with was a small strip sticking out. In order to cut it off without ruining the rest of the cut, I stuck a piece of straight plywood and cut it off on the table saw. The cut itself was pretty sketchy and I wouldn't recommend doing it. I mean, it worked, but I still wouldn't recommend it. It was pretty sketchy. So after that I straightened the strips on my jointer planer to prepare them for the glue up. And the glue up itself went pretty smoothly, only with some minimal panic mode when I thought that I wouldn't make it in time when the glue started to get tacky. But luckily I made it in time and all was good there, so after that I took the top to my local woodworking shop for flattening. Okay, so back to learning processes. So when it comes to woodworking, the way I like to learn is kinda by diving headfirst into the deep sea. And I don't mean that I rush into the project completely blind. I usually have a general idea of what I want to build and I'll give it some thought, consider how to approach it, maybe make a model of it, but when it comes down to it, I usually just try to start right away. And I do it because I know myself, and if I don't start as quickly as possible, most likely I would never get myself to do it, and therefore I wouldn't learn how to do it. And because of that approach, you'll definitely see me make a shitload of mistakes. Sometimes they are minor, sometimes they are questionable, like a table so shaky you set down a cup and it moonwalks off the edge. But that's how I learn, and at least for now it works for me, but it may very well change in the future, so I guess we'll see. This whole process got me thinking about different learning styles. I figured there had to be other ways to approach it, so of course I asked ChatGPT about it. It gave me 4 broad types of learning personalities. First, there's the reflective learner, someone who thinks deeply and analyzes before making a move. Then there's active learner, which is probably where I mostly land in. It's someone who learns best by jumping straight into the experience. The third type is the pragmatic learner, who prefers to understand how and why things work before applying that knowledge to real-life problems. And lastly, the theoretical learner, who thrives on learning from models, concepts, and underlying principles. Now, I know some of you might be screaming at me right now that there is a lot more to these learning styles, and there is quite a bit more than these four, and you're absolutely right, and this is really just a broad overview. But anyway, looking at that list, I kind of realized that I've used all four approaches at different times. And sure, I lean heavily towards being an active learner, but there are moments where I pause to reflect, step back and analyze my results, or do some extra research to understand the why behind something. So I circled back and asked ChatGPT again, and it kind of explained that these four styles aren't rigid categories, they're just tendencies and not fixed definitions. And yeah, I guess that makes sense. Now, going back to the build, after I got the top from flattening, I squared it and gave it a small round over along all the edges with my router, and then I moved on to mounting the legs. I started by clamping the legs to the top and marking the spots for the holes with a marker. That was accurate enough to line up the inserts perfectly without any slope between the leg and the bolt, and I also didn't have any bolts that would be angled and not sit flat from the offset between the insert and the leg. This time I went with a lot bigger inserts as well. The ones I used for this table were M8, so for 8mm bolt, and the insert itself was like 13mm in diameter. To be honest, I was a little surprised how big they were when I got them in mail, but I think that it was a good choice because the legs this time were very stable compared to my previous table. Also, mounting those inserts was the sketchiest part of this entire build. The top itself was already quite thin and I was somewhat afraid about it potentially cracking. It also didn't help that I was testing a new to me technique that I found on YouTube of mounting those inserts with an impact driver. But at the end of the day it all went as planned, so I can call it a success, and the impact driver technique worked perfectly, so I'll be using it in the future. And by skipping a few steps, this is the final product and I am really happy with how it turned out. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Okay, so I said at the beginning of the video that I would show you something I screwed up on this table, so check this out. So yeah, let's take a level. Yeah, do you guys see this? Check this out. Yep, she's bent. I'm just holding it here. Yeah, she's warped. So, and check this out. Like, this is the first table I've made, and this one is fairly flat. Like, there's no wobble anywhere. Not like this or over here. It's flat. So yeah, I kinda missed that. So what I think happened, like the only difference in this top versus this top is that this one was glued up with dowels and it was cut right here, I believe, on this connection, and I think that this prevented the warping. So yeah, this one started warping like a week or 2 weeks after I was done with it, and like it's not bad, but it's something that you can kind of see with a naked eye. It's nothing that would prevent me from using it, but it's not cool and I don't like it. I'm not sure if, I mean, yeah, it probably could have been prevented. And I think that the best way to prevent it would be to just cut it somewhere in the middle and glue it up again to kind of relieve the stresses from the glue up. I don't believe that the dowels do anything with the warping, but I'm not sure. Yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to show you. In the future, I will, if I'm gonna glue something like this again, I'm probably just gonna cut something like this in the middle and just glue it up again. Yeah, so this is what I wanted to show you. Okay, I'm done. See ya.